The Montgomery name carried weight in every boardroom and ballroom in America. But on this particular night, Richard Montgomery wasn't thinking about mergers or millions. He was focused on the silent figure sitting across from him, his 8-year-old son, Lucas. To Richard, a sharply dressed man in his 50s, stern, composed, scanning the menu more out of habit than interest. Lucas didn't speak much these days. Diagnosed with a rare neuromuscular condition, his world had become filled with hospital rooms and specialists. His father had spared no expense. Private therapists, state-of-the-art devices, experimental treatments overseas. Nothing worked. Richard, they said this new therapist has a 32% success rate with similar cases. We start Monday. Lucas gave a small nod but didn't look up. Richard sighed. He hated how tired he sounded, how helpless he felt. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. And then she appeared. Camera pans to a young black waitress, mid-20s, hair in a neat puff, apron clean but faded. She walks toward their table with a quiet confidence. Diana, good evening. Welcome to the Ivy. My name's Diana. Can I get you started with anything to drink? Richard barely looked at her. Just another face. Just a waitress. Richard, sparkling water. For both of us. But Lucas lifted his head and smiled. It was small, barely noticeable. But Diana noticed. Diana smiling back. Hi there. What's your name? Lucas hesitated, then pointed to the menu. Diana crouched beside him. Eye level now. Diana, you can just tell me. Or, do you want to show me? Lucas's fingers traced the pasta dish. Diana with a grin. Ah, the fettuccine. Excellent choice. She winked, and for a flicker of a second, Lucas giggled. It was the first time Richard had heard that sound in almost a year. Something about her, her ease, her tone, the way she didn't tiptoe around the wheelchair, unnerved him. It didn't fit. Richard, we're fine. You can take our order now. Diana stood, unfazed. Diana, of course. I'll be right back. She walks away. Richard's eyes narrowed. T.O. Richard. People had roles. Boxes. Waitresses took orders. Therapists delivered results. Children obeyed. And if something was broken, you threw money at it until it worked again. Lucas, however, couldn't be bought back. Scene shifts to later that night. Tables begin to empty. The jazz band packs up. Lucas has fallen asleep, his head tilted to one side. Richard was reviewing business emails on his phone when he heard soft humming. Not music from the speakers. Real humming. He looked up. Diana stood near the entrance, gently swaying as she stacked menus. It was almost like she was dancing. She turned, saw Richard watching, and didn't flinch. Diana lightly. Sorry. Old habit. Music gets in your bones, you know? Richard dryly. Not particularly. Diana. Right. Of course. She began wiping the table beside him. Richard, you seem comfortable here. Diana, without looking up. Comfortable is relative. This job pays the bills. Richard, and the dancing? Diana, just movement. That's all dance is, really. The freedom to move how you feel, even if it's not perfect. She glanced at Lucas. Diana softer. Sometimes it's not about fixing what's broken. It's about finding what still moves. That struck something. Richard didn't reply. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone earning tips. Richard, sharply, you seem to have opinions about things outside your job description. Diana, smiling politely. I see people. That's part of the job, too. She walked away again. He should have forgotten her name by the time they pulled away in the black car that night. He should have filed the encounter into that part of his mind labeled irrelevant. But he didn't. Something about her words, her presence, followed him. Next day, in his penthouse office, Richard types into his laptop. Freedom to move after neuromuscular diagnosis. Nothing helpful. And then he remembered something Diana said. Dance is just movement, even if it's not perfect. So he searched movement therapy for disabled children, dance-based. One result stood out. An adaptive movement program for children with motor challenges. Photos of children with braces, wheelchairs, canes, laughing, spinning, exploring. And on the homepage, a familiar face. Diana Johnson, program director, Waitress or something more. He stared at the screen. There, in bold print beneath her name, movement is not about perfection. It's about possibility. And then, even more surprising, at the bottom of the website, proposal submitted to the Montgomery Foundation, status, rejected. 3 times. Richard's hand slowly tightened around the mouse. Richard, she knew who I was. He leaned back. What game was she playing? He didn't like being surprised, and he hated being manipulated. But what bothered him the most was the question echoing in his mind. What if she's right? Lucas looking out the car window, a spark of curiosity in his eyes. Fade to black. Scene opens on the gleaming entrance of a renovated community center. The sign outside reads, Freedom Steps, Adaptive Movement Studio. For a man who had negotiated billion-dollar contracts, Richard Montgomery had never felt this unsure about walking through a door. He told no one, not his secretary, not Lucas's doctors, not even his assistant. He just showed up, alone. Inside, he's greeted by soft music, open floor space, colorful mats, and mirrored walls. There are no white coats. No wheelchairs parked sadly against the wall. Just laughter, some with crutches, some with braces, a few using walkers, all moving. Not perfectly, not symmetrically, but freely. Diana Johnson enters from a side room, wearing leggings, sneakers, and a Freedom Steps t-shirt. Her hair is tied up. She's smiling until she sees him. Diana, well, if it isn't the guy who doesn't dance. Richard, you use a false identity to serve me pasta. Diana, no. I took a part-time job to pay rent after your foundation rejected my grant proposal. Again, she wipes her hands on a towel, never breaking eye contact. Diana, but thank you for stopping by. I assume you're here to verify I'm not conning you? Richard, cool. I'm here because my son smiled for the first time in months after a 5-minute interaction with you. That's statistically improbable. Diana raises an eyebrow. Diana, and yet, here we are. Come on, I want to show you something. She leads him to a side room. There's a wall of videos, each labeled with a child's name, diagnosis, and progress clips. She hits play. A girl with cerebral palsy, braces on both legs, attempts to lift one foot to the beat of music. She fails. Then she tries again. And again. Diana, this is Amira. Doctor said she'd never walk unassisted. That was last year. Clip changes. Same girl, now moving across a dance mat, wobbly but unaided, laughing with her instructor. Richard, you're not a therapist. Diana, correct. I'm a movement coach with a background in neurodevelopment. I partner with pediatric specialists and occupational therapists, but we don't treat bodies here. We teach trust. She turns off the video. Diana, your son doesn't need to be fixed, Mr. Montgomery. He needs to be free to fall, without someone rushing to catch him every time. Richard shifts uncomfortably. This isn't how he's used to being spoken to. Richard, falling can lead to injury. Diana, and never falling leads to fear. Diana, let him try. You can stand in the back. Don't interfere. He wanted to say no, wanted to turn, leave, dismiss it all as sentimental nonsense. But for the first time in years, he didn't have a better idea. Lucas sits in his wheelchair, eyes wide as he watches other kids move. Diana crouches beside him. Diana, hey, you remember me? Lucas nods, a little hesitant. Diana, want to try something new? You can say no. Lucas's fingers twitch. Then he nods again. Diana doesn't rush. She gently helps him to his feet, bracing him with a lightweight walker nearby. He's unsure, trembling. The music starts. A slow, simple rhythm. Diana places his hand on her shoulder and begins to sway gently. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't even balanced. But it was movement. For 3 minutes, Lucas shifted his weight, lifted one foot, then the other. His face was tense, then determined, then proud. Camera cuts to Richard, frozen at the back of the room, eyes glistening. For the first time, he wasn't calculating or correcting. He was witnessing. After the music ends, Lucas looks up at Diana. Lucas, can I do that again? Diana, smiling. Of course. But this time you lead. And he did. His steps weren't graceful, but they were his. After the session, Richard approaches Diana while Lucas plays with another boy. Richard, you got through to him. Diana, he got through to himself. I just made space. Richard, you said something about trust. Diana, yeah, kids know when you're lying to them. If all they ever hear is you're fragile, they'll believe it. I don't lie to them. I tell them the truth. It'll be hard. And sometimes you'll fall. But you'll rise too. She meets his eyes. Diana, he needs that more than another custom wheelchair. Richard glances over at Lucas, who is laughing now, free, light. It was the moment something cracked open inside him. A man who had controlled every outcome, bought every shortcut, suddenly realized he couldn't buy this. Richard, what would it take to expand this? Diana blinked. Diana, I've tried, but funding's always cut. People don't believe in programs like this. They want numbers, metrics, guarantees. Richard, I'm a numbers man, but I also know when something works. He looked at her again, no longer just a waitress, no longer even just a movement coach. Richard, you built something real. That night, for the first time in years, Richard Montgomery didn't take a call during dinner. He sat beside his son and watched as Lucas really talked, about how he felt when the music played, about how his legs didn't work like the other kids. But they worked enough, and Richard listened, not to solve, not to fix, just to hear him. Scene fades out with Lucas saying goodnight to Diana. She gives him a fist bump. Lucas, same time next week? Diana, smiling. Count on it, boss. A sleek, glass-paneled boardroom in the heart of Montgomery Capital. 11 men and women in suits sit around a long table, laptops open, papers stacked neatly. The usual setting for acquisition talks and corporate strategy. Narrator, VO. Richard Montgomery had commanded rooms like this for decades. He knew how to control markets, dismantle competitors, and rally shareholders. But today, he wasn't leading a billion-dollar deal. He was pitching dance therapy. Richard stands at the head of the table. Behind him is a projector slide that reads, Freedom Steps Expansion Proposal. Board member number 1, incredulous. You want us to fund a community movement center? Richard, this isn't charity. It's a foundation built on return-based impact. Richard, calmly. And I'm telling you, this is impact. He clicks to the next slide. Video footage plays. Lucas, a little boy with a brace on his left leg, stands tall on a mat, his arms lifted, leading a slow, intentional spin. In the background, Diana claps with a wide grin. Richard, this is my son. The doctor said he'd never walk without full support. That was 6 months ago. Board member number 2. We're not a healthcare foundation. This feels anecdotal. Richard, what if the anecdote is the future of pediatric rehabilitation? He clicks again. Data now fills the screen. Reduce hospital visits, increase emotional well-being scores, improve muscle response. Richard, Diana Johnson's methodology blends neuroscience, movement, and self-actualization. She has no formal medical degree, but she's produced results that no traditional clinic has come close to. Board member number 3, raising eyebrows. Is this about your son or about your guilt? Richard, both. The room went still. Richard Montgomery had never admitted guilt in any context. Not in the boardroom, not in public, not even at home. But he was done pretending. Richard, for years, I told myself I was doing everything I could, custom chairs, private tutors, specialists flown in from Switzerland. But Lucas needed none of that. He needed one person to say, let's try it your way. And it wasn't me. It was her. Cut to Diana Johnson, unaware of what's happening in the boardroom. She's sitting cross-legged on a dance mat, playing a rhythm game with a new child. Back to boardroom. Richard, I'm committing a full 5-year grant to fund Freedom Steps. starting with a new permanent rehabilitation center in the city. This won't be a donation. It'll be a declaration that we back real change, even if it doesn't wear a white coat. Scene fades to black as murmurs rise and the board members begin quietly nodding, some skeptical, others inspired. Press conference outside the Montgomery Foundation headquarters. Camera flashes pop. Journalists hold out mics. A large banner reads, Montgomery Foundation to fund Revolutionary Pediatric Movement Center. Journalist, Mr. Montgomery, can you tell us why this initiative means so much to you? Richard, because I saw my son do something $1 billion couldn't buy. And I saw a woman help him do it without asking for anything in return. Diana, standing just behind him, looks completely stunned. She leans toward him, whispering. Diana, under breath, what are you doing? Richard, trusting the process. He steps back and raises her hand gently for the cameras. Richard, on one condition. Ms. Johnson retains full autonomy over the methodology. No corporate interference. No rebranding. No executive oversight. That statement would ripple through media outlets, academic circles, and disability rights forums for weeks. For once, a billionaire had stepped aside and let the teacher lead. Construction site 3 months later. Bulldozers roll across an empty lot. Lucas is there, holding a tiny blue flag with the Freedom Steps logo, smiling proudly. It wasn't the flashiest project the Montgomery Foundation had ever funded, but it was the one where every single blueprint had input from children and parents. The center would have textured walls for sensory engagement, rooms with adjustable mirrors, outdoor walkways with variable terrain to train different muscle groups. Diana walks the site with blueprints in hand. Richard appears beside her, wearing work boots. Diana, teasing, didn't take you for a hard hat guy. Richard, didn't take you for a grant winner. They laugh. For the first time, their tone is light. Richard, serious now. You think I'm doing this for public redemption? Diana, aren't you? Richard, quietly. Lucas asked to remove his second brace last week. His old therapist said it would take 2 more years. Diana, and Richard, you fired her. Said she was wrong. Diana, she was. She shows him a photo of Lucas balancing with only one crutch, a small crowd of kids cheering him on. Sometimes redemption isn't about headlines. It's about humility. And sometimes the most radical change comes when the most powerful man in the room decides to listen. Construction progressing. Kids touring mock-up rooms. Parents in tears. Diana training new instructors. Richard attending quietly, never speaking publicly again. He started showing up, not with speeches, not with fanfare, but with presence. At first, people thought he was micromanaging. Then they realized he wasn't managing at all. He was learning. Scene closes with Diana, reviewing a news article titled, From Waitress to Revolutionary, Diana Johnson's Path to Changing Pediatric Care. Diana, to herself, not bad for a waitress who wasn't supposed to matter. She looks out the window where Lucas is helping a younger boy from a fall, gently encouraging him to try again. She hadn't just built a program. She had built a philosophy. And Richard hadn't just funded a center. He had finally, truly joined the dance. 6 months later, a massive ribbon-cutting ceremony. The newly built Freedom Steps Rehabilitation Center stands gleaming under the morning sun. Kids in wheelchairs, walkers, and braces fill the courtyard, accompanied by parents, volunteers, and curious onlookers. The contrast between this day and the night it all began couldn't have been starker. No spilled drinks, no sideways glances, no dismissive whispers. Only music, laughter, and movement. On stage, Lucas stands in front of a microphone. He's now 10, a little taller, wearing a blue button-up shirt and khakis. On his left leg, only a lightweight brace remains. No wheelchair, no crutches. Lucas, nervously. Hi, I'm Lucas. 6 months ago, I couldn't walk without help. I couldn't climb stairs. And I definitely couldn't dance. But Ms. Diana told me I didn't have to move like other people. I just had to move like me. The crowd breaks into applause. Richard watches quietly from the side. He doesn't approach the stage. He doesn't speak. Not yet. Lucas didn't perform alone that day. He led a routine, one that he helped choreograph, with 3 other children, each with different nobility challenges. They moved in unison, in rhythm, at their own pace. It wasn't about perfection. It was about power, claimed, shared, and lived. Diana watching from the wings. Her hand clutches a worn napkin with a coffee stain, a reminder how it all began. Inside the new center's main hall, photos line the walls. Children mid-step, smiling, reaching, laughing. Journalists mingle with therapists. Reporters wait by the door. Then Richard steps up to a podium for the first time. Richard, looking out over the crowd. When I first saw this center drawn on paper, I thought it was about movement, walking, coordination, improvement. I was wrong. It's about transformation. He pauses, scanning the room. He finds Diane in the back, arms crossed, eyes narrowed skeptically. Richard, I used to think leadership meant being the first to blaze a trail, that building empires meant knowing all the answers. Then I met a woman who taught me something I'd never considered, that real leaders sometimes follow. Diana's arms uncross. She tilts her head, watching him intently. Richard, so what's the biggest lesson I've learned? That my son never needed fixing. That I did. Stunned silence. The room exhales. Richard, I've made a lot of money. I've acquired companies, scaled operations, and been the face of strategy. But this is the first time I've ever felt like I helped build something that mattered. A single camera flash goes off. Then another. Then applause. Montage. A year passes. The Freedom Steps program expanded to 3 new cities that year. Its blueprint, co-designed by children and movement therapists, was adopted by several children's hospitals. Diana Johnson received the National Pediatric Rehabilitation Innovation Award, not for her resume, but for her results. Lucas walking across a schoolyard, only using a light cane. He's laughing with a group of classmates. He drops the cane to try a short run, stumbles but gets up, grinning. Lucas enrolled in regular school. On difficult days, he used a cane. On great days, he didn't need it. But on all days, he spoke at schools, hospitals, and therapy centers as a youth spokesperson for Freedom Steps. Lucas to a group of kids. Your body isn't wrong. It's just learning a different beat. Find it and dance to it. Richard and Diana walking through the original center on a rainy afternoon. Diana, I've got to admit, I never thought you'd stick around this long. Richard, I didn't either. Diana, you finally apologized. Sort of. Richard, compensation first. Accountability later. Diana, and humility? Richard, still working on it. They both chuckle. Then silence as they look through the glass at children playing in a movement session. Richard, you know what I realized? Diana, what? Richard, I thought I had to be the one carrying Lucas. But now I know. He just needed me to walk beside him. Diana, that's the difference between control and care. Lucas, in the new center's main hall, teaching a younger girl how to balance on one leg. He steps back, lets her wobble, lets her fall, and helps her get up, just like Diana once did for him. In a world where powerful people rarely change, and where people without power are often overlooked, this story reminds us that transformation begins with the most unexpected of moments. A waitress giving a child the dignity to lead, a billionaire deciding to listen, and a boy with a brace daring take the first step, so the world could follow. If this story about how a simple act of dignity changed a child's future and a father's heart moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Voice of Tales. Because we believe that the most powerful revolutions don't start with billion-dollar fortunes or big names. They start when someone finally decides to listen, and someone else is brave enough to lead.